Okay, now that we have a way for our player to interact with our world because we've set up our hotbars and our controls, and we have a way for our user to actually input their own data and we can get that, let's actually create some static data. And what I mean by that is if you want to have a story-driven game, or maybe you just want to use this system for something else, we're going to have a way for our player to interact with a not playable character or an NPC. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go on our entities layer and we're going to double click and we're going to add our NPC sprite. So let's go into our assets folder and let's add NPC idle 1 and let's hit OK. And that's going to be fine because we only are going to have one animation for this guy. So we're going to actually rename this to ID idle and let's make another frame. So let's add another frame and let's open up idle 2. And let's have him hold idle 2 for one more frame. And then let's duplicate the first one and sandwich it in the middle. So now it's going to look like this. And then it's going to just loop that through. So that's going to be our idle animation. Let's set the origin point to be at the bottom, just like the player. And let's apply that to every single frame or whole animation. So now the entire animation has the origin point at the bottom. And let's just double check his bounding box here. So let's right click and set it to a bounding box with his collision. And let's say you can collide with him probably like around here. Something like that. It doesn't really matter, but this player our player could potentially run into him. So there we go. Okay, so he's all set up. So let's put him on our entities layer somewhere around here away from our player because let's call it our SPR NPC, and let's give it some behaviors. The first behavior we want to give it is a solid behavior, and the second one is going to be our line of sight. So he also is going to have a line of sight, but it's going to be different from our sign. It's not going to pop up the message. It's going to pop up something that says, press this button. So let's do that. Let's go onto our text layer now, and let's double click and add a new sprite. And let's open it up and let's find the press X NPC press X sprite. And as you see here, I have made a very wonderful drawing of it saying press X. You can make it say whatever you want. And we don't even need to fix this, but we can make it a bounding box anyway. It's not going to have collision, but it was kind of bothering. So that's okay. We don't need to set the origin or anything like that. Let's just exit out and let's put this right on top of our player. Okay, you know what? Let's set the origin a little bit. Let's set the origin of this to be the top left instead of the middle. And that way, when we center it, it should be more like a tile. There we go. Okay, cool. So now that we have that, let's call it our SPR press X. And that's all we need to do. Let's change the initial visibility of it to invisible, and let's hit save. The final thing we have to implement on the text layer here is our actual story. Oop, that's the wrong thing. So let's double click and add a new sprite. And let's see what I have created for us. I have T1, T2, and T3. And they're very, very bad, but this is going to be our story. So here's how we're going to do this. This is going to be ID 1. So we're going to call this ID 1. We're going to make a new animation. We're going to call this ID 2. And on ID 2, we're going to actually open up and import the next one, T2, add another animation for ID 3, go to ID 3, and call this T3. And if you look at these, they're very silly, and this is just a static story. So I had to make this in a different program because there's no text features in here, but it's just a static image that says, Traveler, you must do me a solid. Go kill the slimes. And it's a very basic way to tell a story. And obviously you can make this a lot better and you can do a bunch of different things, but this is going to be our story that our NPC tells. So it's almost like receiving a quest, and you could eventually make it act as a quest and say, now that you've talked to this NPC, there's a quest. Let's actually move this sign over a little bit since it's too close to our player or our NPC. But that's how we're going to set up our NPC. In the next lecture, we're going to get into programming it.